Yeah, as long as I have all this open space here without the caliper, I think my next step is going to be to reinstall my axles so that I can torque the large nut on the end of the axle here, torque it to spec using the studs as a counter hold. And then once I have the axles supporting the bearing in the hub, then I can go ahead and test fit wheels, tires, and spacers and all that good stuff. So I'm going to do the axles before I do the calipers. Also, I need to dig up my brake lines. I have some steel lines, stainless steel lines here somewhere, but I don't know where they are. Time to install my axle shafts back in. Not a whole lot to really explain here other than make sure you insert this end into the hub from the backside first. Yeah, insert it through the hub so this protrudes out of the front, and then you can secure it in place with one of these huge washers and a castle nut. Just kind of get it on there, hand tight for now, in position, and then you can take the other end that goes against the transmission, check that there is enough grease in there. If not, pack in a little bit more to keep the joint nice and lubed. Then make sure you assemble these onto the transmission axle shafts using the bolts, the correct grade bolts. Just look for the part number on the Porsche PET or in any of the European parts supply websites. I think these are a grade 12.9. And most importantly, to make sure these things don't back out, you need to assemble them with these little backing plates. And they assemble like this. There's six bolts, and every 2 bolts get secured with a plate behind it. Then you put the bolt and washer through it, and you have to use brand new snore washers. These washers with the little teeth on them. And this is what they look like. They have little teeth on them so that they don't back out. And these are M8s, and this is the part number and the supplier where you can get these for a lot cheaper than what Porsche offers them for. And it's very important that you put these plates and the snore washers in here, because these plates add a little bit of extra strength on this little cap. This cap is it's just a thin sheet metal cap, and if you just put the bare bolts in here, it'll crush this metal and eventually they'll back out. So this allows you to spread the load over a larger area on the cap, and it gives you a nice hard surface for the snore washers to bite into. You can see here how they have you can see the little tooth marks on them. So make sure you use the backing plates, snore washers. Oh, and on the front side, you'll need to source some new very large cotter pins to secure the castle nut once you torque them in place. But otherwise, that is pretty much it. There's a little gasket that goes between this surface and the axle shaft, the stub axle on the transmission. Usually a little paper gasket with like a sticky side. Mine are stuck on the transmission side, so I'm gonna leave them there. You can see them right there. So I'm gonna just give it a quick wipe and pack in a little more grease and call them good. case anyone was wondering how I was preventing the axle from spinning while I was torquing that, because I had to keep both hands on the torque wrench so I wouldn't strip the heads of the bolts. I stuck a flathead screwdriver into the slots here in the rotor, and the screwdriver prevented it from turning whenever I was torquing it. So that's all I did, and then I would take it out, turn it to the next one, put it back in the rotor, and close it and keep it from turning again. So that's it. Little trick there. Now we got to torque this bad boy, which is going to take a minimum of 217 foot-pounds. So yeah, this is going to be a bit tough. Fortunately, this torque wrench should do it. Let's see if I can make that happen. I guess I should just do the same trick, right? Okay. All right, now that it's tightened up a decent amount, use the same strategy. Ooh, that'll do it. The problem here, the hole that the cotter pin goes through is right on top of one of these tabs, so I need to torque it a little bit more. Just a tad more. Smidge more. All right, that's good right there. The torque spec is 217 to 231 foot-pounds, so I've got quite a bit of range. Now we need to pop this guy in. Oh, this is a pain. That is a little bit annoying. Okay, I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter. One side done. Time to mount these calipers on, and I had some shiny new rear stainless steel lines to put in, but off camera I struggled to disconnect the end of the rubber brake line and the hard brake line that is in the body. Both of those flare nuts are stripped, or rounded rather. They look just like this. Imagine this is the rubber line and this is the hard line going into the body to the master cylinder. These little soft copper nuts are rounded and they're stuck. I can't get them off. So as much as it pains me, I don't want to open up another can of worms and lower the transmission mount and keep the transmission propped up so that I can get to the junction and the brake line to remove the two hard lines and replace those and be able to put in my steel lines. So I'm going to leave those the way they are. Those rubber lines are only about 5 years old and they're still good. They don't leak or anything, so I'll leave those for now. And I'm gonna put the calipers on, and I'll save the stainless steel hard lines for another time when I'm bored and need to wrench. But this project has to move on, so let's get it done. Okay, rear calipers. If you recall, the mounting holes for the calipers are back here behind the rotor. They are here and here, and I think the lower one has a limited clearance to get the bolt on, or to get a tool in here. So let's just see if we can get these things on relatively easily. Okay, which caliper we want? Not this one. This one has the bleed screw on the bottom. We want this one with the bleed screw on top and the line pointing inward. Okay, I gotta take my little plug off that I put on here so that it didn't leak all over the place. I'm just slipping the brake line through the tab on the, oh boy, now we're leaking fluid. I gotta get this on quick. Let's go, let's go. Need to hang the caliper very quickly with one bolt so it doesn't fall. And then I hope you can see, I have to come back over here and connect that before my entire brake circuit bleeds out. So let me get that situated real quick and then we'll continue. Just hand tight. Hard to tell. I wish there was an easier way to film this, but okay, leave that one loose. Okay, now I'm gonna get my second bolt, and this one installs, where is the hole? There it is. I can feel it with my finger. I can feel it in my fingers. Okay, it's in the hole, threading it in as much as I can. If I recall correctly, it was hard to get the socket and the ratchet in there together. Yeah, I'm surprised the trailing arm doesn't have a through hole here so that you can stick an extension directly into the socket, but you can't. So I think I'm gonna put the socket on. I'll put the socket on first. Okay. Now I'm going to get the ratchet, drop it down behind. Will it clear? Yes, it will. I don't know if I'll be able to get the torque wrench in there. Okay, that one's on Hand tight. Top one is on. Hand tight too. Let's see what the torque spec is. Torque spec is 43 foot-pounds. Let's tighten the top one. Whoa. Whoa, already? Wow. My hand tight meets the torque spec. Very cool. Can I get the wrench in the bottom? I don't think so. Since basically this was 43 foot-pounds. There. That should be the same, if not a tad more. Yeah, good. Okay, now snug down my brake line. Let's move this over here. Okay, 17, 11. Let's see if this works. Let's see if the palm of my hand is enough to resist the torque. There. That's probably good enough. There. Not too much. Okay, now the hex kind of recesses back into the back of this tab. That's why it was tough to put a wrench on there. And now I can put this guy on here. There. It's good. Good and tight. Remember to save your busted old lines to use as plugs for this type of stuff so you don't leak fluid everywhere. So this is done for now. Calipers torqued up. Man, things are getting exciting. Now I'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so both calipers are back in and the lines are connected. There's the soft line over there. If you look on the other side, this one's connected too, but I don't like how tight this rubber line is. A little bit tight. I don't like that. It's kind of dangerous for the line. Remember how we disconnected the shock to get more clearance for installation of the axles? Well, on this side, I'm gonna pick up the trailing arm, put the shock bolt back in so that that line relaxes and doesn't get messed up. Alrighty, let that go, and let's take a look at our line. And now it's much better, nice and relaxed. So good. Now here comes the good part. Okay, with the rear brakes wrapped up, here's a preview of something I've been waiting a long time to do. And if you recall, I put in these longer studs. I forget how long they are. I think they're 80 millimeters. They're partially threaded. I'm not too crazy about that. I wish they were fully threaded. but I wanted this length, and this length was only available partially threaded. But I ordered a pair of Porsche 911 930 turbo OE wheel spacers. I think these are 20-ish millimeters, and this is what they will be doing. So those go on there like that. Now most of the partially threaded portion of the shank is gone, and the thickness of the hub should be more than this. I calculated to be about 3 threads before the lug nut touches. So now we can take our Fuchs, stick them on, and see what this extended length look will look like. Finally, this is the moment I've been waiting for. That's what it's going to look like with the wheels installed and the lug nuts fully seated all the way down. And you're going to have a few threads sticking out, but it's approximately the same amount, slightly less than the ones at the front. So I kind of wanted to have, at least from a eyeball view, I want to have the same amount of threads sticking out of the lug nuts, and I'd say that's pretty close. So super excited about that. Time to take the wheel off and wrap up the last little bits here. Time to bleed the brakes. Got some fresh fluid and my fancy schmancy setup of a hose line and a jar with a hole in it. And I got tired of ruining fittings with these cheap wrenches that I've had for about, I don't know, 20 years or something. And they've done the job, but these little tiny ones, they flex. Every time you go around the fitting, instead of gripping, they flex and they round out the hex fitting. So I decided to get some proper ones on eBay that hopefully will serve me a little better. And these things can go in the recycle bin to be turned into tin cans or something. pedal. Feels good. Brake bleed is done. It had been so long since I last bled my brakes that I forgot that I didn't use any of these wrenches, but rather this itty bitty 8mm one to loosen up the bleed screws. So I think it's been about 10 years, and the color of my fluid shows it. It's like the color of a nice, like a unfiltered hazy IPA. Looks kind of delicious. But yeah, don't do what I do, and change your fluid more often, especially if you're tracking or driving in a spirited fashion. So the absolute last thing I got to replace on the rear before I call it done is I got to replace these old green Bilsteins with these new adjustable yellow Konis. They got a bunch of IKEA style pictogram instructions. I'm not going to look at that yet. Before I get too overwhelmed by that, I'm going to remove the shocks. They're loosely connected on the bottom, so that'll keep them from spinning. And now I gotta undo this top nut here, and then the one behind here, which is going to be a bit tough to get to. $17mm. I already sprayed a little bit of Croil on here. Ooh. Oh, this is gonna suck on the other side. I think I need a socket. Yep, there we go. Otherwise, I was just spinning around in circles. This is a huge pain. How am I going to do that on the other side? Whoa. That was a big kaboom. Oops. I forgot to put a jack underneath the shock. All right. This one's out. Time to do the other side. You can see the other shock bolt right here. I don't know if I have enough arm length to go all the way around the world with both of my arms, but I will do my best. Okay, so I've done a couple things to get access to the bolt. I've taken off the air filter and the cover, disconnected the two breather hoses, and now I can kind of get to it. But we're gonna do this in a slightly different order, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove the shock on the other side since the top is already disconnected. Whoa. Alrighty. That comes down. And now we have this little okay, this looks familiar from the Koni kit. Alright, anyway, we have this little gummy damper up here and a bushing, and then the bolt. So cool. Let's see what happens next. Okay, the left side shock is out, and I kept everything the way it is mounted in the car for reference. Yeah, the shock tower is supposed to go in here in this gap. Otherwise this goes below the shock tower, this goes above the shock tower, and then this is what we can access. So we'll leave that for now. On the left side, sorry, right side, I did put the jack under the control arm and picked it up ever so slightly to the point where I could spin the bolt off with my fingers, so that hopefully I removed some of the preload on this bolt, and it will be likely to spin a little bit easier with less friction from the shock and the trailing arm pulling it down. So let's see if that helps. Okay, so here's the method that seems to be working so far. I was able to get a set of vice grips, kind of the average sized ones. I'll show them to you a little bit later. And very, very carefully I was able to maneuver from the back, guide them with this hand, my right hand, and clamp them onto the very top of the center shaft with the flats. And then I was able to get this 17mm wrench that has a little bendy end to make it a little shorter. With this hand I was able to grab the vice grips, and with this hand I'm doing this, one partial turn at a time, and it seems to be working. So I can come in here, put this on the nut like that. I can reach with my other hand, grab the vice grips, and do about quarter turn. There's a bunch of vacuum lines and stuff in the way, so this is kind of slow and tedious. Short of like an engine drop, this might be the easiest way to do it. There we go, another quarter turn. Little by little, seems to be working. Let's see how long it takes me until I can drop the shock. Another quarter turn. Oh man, this is gonna take forever because this is a fine thread nut. And the reason why this fights you the whole time is that it's an oval lock nut. So you can't crack it loose and spin it off like a regular hex nut. It's gonna stay tight for the entire time. Yay. But there we go, another quarter. Eventually I have to run out of threads. What was that, like 6 quarter turns? So I've got a turn and a half. I wonder if I can take it off now with the air ratchet. Let's take off the vice grip, which you just heard release from the back. This is the vice grip. All right. It's going the right way. Let's try this out. I don't know why this thing couldn't loosen. How about now? Let's go. Oh, thank God. Thank God. There's a little nub. There's the nub and the washer. All right, let's get this out of here. That was way more difficult than it needed to be. Support the shock. Take the bolt out. Don't lose any of the bits. Okay, all right, finally. Oh boy, see, you can tell there's the little chewed up flat head, or the chewed up flat section where I was messing with the vice grip. This is not an ideal way to do it, but I was able to get it on there and go, where was it? Kind of like that, and then I went, and that's it. That was enough to hold it in place. So finally we're done. Okay, so I'm trying to familiarize myself with the construction of the Konis so that I put them in the car correctly. And while I'm at it, this is a good time to compare the two shocks, and also just look at the 911 shock construction in general. You've got the shock body facing down, the shaft going up. This big rubber thing is a bump stop, and this whole thing fits underneath this dust shield or sleeve. So the shock that you see looks like that, and then this goes through the shock tower, obviously, and then you've got these two rubber cushions with a sleeve, and this sleeve goes like that over the bolt. This goes over like that. This obviously goes underneath the shock tower. One of these gummy things goes under the shock tower, another one goes over the shock tower. So the shock tower goes in here. Then you put on this big old washer, and then you put on this oval lock nut, or prevailing torque lock nut. And these are a pain because you just have this little flat bit up here to hold on to the shaft, keep it from spinning while you spin the nut down and torque it. I think this was a 6mm little I was able to get a 6mm wrench on here, which is absolutely tiny. It worked on the right side, I mean on the left side, but not on the right side. So yeah, kind of a pain, but that's what the way I made it work. The Koni is basically the same type of construction. Shock body, the shaft going facing up with a big rubber bump stop underneath this dust shield thing, and it's got the threaded end, and then on top of the threaded end is this little adjuster nub. And well, actually, here, let me just finish off the construction so you understand. It goes on like that, same way as the Bilstein, and then it's got the same type of cushions with the sleeve. I think this needs to compress a little more, but anyway, you put these on top, one above, one below the shock tower and the washer and the nut, which in this case is a bigger thread. It might be M12, but this is a regular hex nut with a nylock end, so this one should be much easier to install. And top it off, this little top section up here is a hex feature. So while I'm down here trying to tighten down this big nut, I can hold the shaft with another hex wrench or a tiny socket and lock it down. But the star of the show on the Konis is the little adjuster thing up here. This little nub on top is where this little adjuster knob goes. And what you do here is, let's see if I can, this is tough to do on the ground, but you can basically turn this thing 2 full turns to go. You can do 4 different damping settings, from 1 plus, 2 plus, 3 plus, 4 plus. Essentially you have 4 damping settings, kind of 1 through 4. To get to 1, you turn it 180 degrees. To 2, you turn it 360 degrees. To do 3, you do 1.5 turns. And to do 4, max dampening, you turn 2 full turns. And this thing, I can't do it here, I don't have an extra hand, but you'll see when it's mounted on the car that this little tab will spin inside of this shaft, and it will change the damping, which is nice because I can put these on top and I can get in here. If I'm dialing in the suspension, I can very quickly reach over the shock towers and set it to, you know, full soft, and then wind my way up to the amount of damping that I want. So yeah, very, very cool. I wish the fronts would do that. Maybe at some point in the future I'll upgrade to Konis in the front as well. But one more thing before I put the Koni Yellows on, I took this bump stop and scooched it down the shaft a little more, about this distance here, a little bit over an inch, just so that this shaft is roughly the same height as this one, so that when I put it in the car with the little new bumpers and everything, I have enough thread exposed to get the nut on, get a few threads, and then start to crank down on it, and then eventually this will all settle into its final position once it's all torqued correctly. Okay, as long as I have the jack under the right side at the height that I need, I'm going to go ahead and install this right side unit and see how it lines up. Okay, so I need to do big side facing up. Okay, big side facing up with the bushing like that. Now I gotta go up. Okay, up into the shock cavity, which is that hole right there. Can't see, but I'll just poke around till it, okay, I think we've gone in, good. Where did I leave my bolt? Here's the bolt. I'll just put this on and tight for now. Okay. Okay, do that for now. Let's go up top. So I'm looking at the threaded rod coming out of the shock tower, and it's there, but it's shorter than the height of this, so I'm not going to be able to get this washer and the nut started. So I think I gotta take this all out and run the bump stop down even lower. So the final successful recipe is 19mm wrench for the Konis, 19mm wrench from the backside onto the hex nut, and little 10mm 9mm wrench on the hex feature on the shaft to keep it from spinning. Anti-rotation feature. And now I can hold the shaft steady and tighten this down. I'm getting maybe a quarter turn. I'm lucky. Fortunately, I didn't have to take apart the entire CIS, which would have been a huge pain. Ooh, break time. It's something is stabbing my arm. I think it's this. Okay, so I'm switching to a 9mm socket so that I can have more contact here, and you know, with 6 points instead of this little 12-point thing that might strip this little guy here. So I want to hold this steady and crank 59 foot-pounds on the threads, but I think this is what I'm gonna have to use. So let's see. And I don't need a deep socket. Let's see if we can fit it in. It's right here. Here we go. Righty tighty. All this effort for one shock. It's not even a strut or a coilover. That's as tight as it's going to get. I'm pretty sure that's 59 foot-pounds. Yeah, that's pretty tight. Good enough. If I get clunking or rattling from the top of the shock, then we'll revisit the torque, but it's a lock nut. It's not going anywhere. Cool. I barely have enough room in here to get my plastic Koni adjuster knob. Yeah, we'll have to figure out how to do that because these things are in the way. All right, on to the next one. Oh, thank God. Thank goodness. There we go. Ta-da. Shocks are done. Oops. Let's see if I can grease up. Oh man. These fittings are way too bulky and huge. Alrighty, I was able to get into the clip into the outer fitting. Let's see if this works. I hear something. Okay, give it a few pumps. I think that should do it. We'll move on to the other fitting. Okay, so after retracting the fitting, I can see a little bit of ooze out here, so that's good. That means grease is going into the general direction. Good news. Now we got to get to the other little fitting, which is a little bit more hidden. Okay, so I got the inner one clipped on. Sorry, I can't really show you on the camera, but spun it on. It seems to be on tight, so it's hopefully pump in some grease. I don't see it leaking out, so it must be pumping in. It's good. Good news, I think, I hope. Nothing too crazy. I mean, a little bit oozing out. Oh, there's a bunch right here. It's nice. Okay, well, I think maybe that's about it. A couple pumps and it's full. The gap between the two parts, the grease gap, is very thin, so maybe that's enough. So I learned a lot about grease fittings with this project. I had previously no knowledge of them because I don't really deal with race car parts. But here's my old grease gun that, shoot, I probably bought, I don't know, secondhand somewhere for like 20 bucks. It originally had this little push-on fitting for that just pops onto the Zerk fittings, but it requires, and it's the most compact one of all my fittings, but it requires so much force to pop on and pop off that it wasn't going to work in this application here with those hard to reach spring plate bushing fittings. So that doesn't work. I bought this quick release one online that turns out is even bigger. It's huge, but it is kind of cool that you can just kind of has this little trigger feature on here so that you can one-handed clip on and lock onto the fittings, pump the grease in, and then come off. This will be more useful for easier to access fittings, probably on the VW Rabbit, so I'm going to keep it. The third and final option that ended up working were these really inexpensive spin-on, spin-off fitting, twist to tighten fittings that I got on Amazon, and they came in a 2-pack. And essentially, you spin it so that it's loose, and then you can pop it over the grease fitting, and then you spin it back, and then it tightens. And this one was reasonably small, so I was able to successfully use it on my spring plate bushing fittings and spring plate bushing grease fittings. And yeah, this ended up doing the job. But that about does it for the assembly portion of the rear suspension. There's one last little bit that I'm not going to install, which is the rear sway bar. The reason for that is that since I'm going to do all my alignment activities, ride height, alignment, corner balance, etc., this needs to be disconnected. So since it's gonna kind of get in the way right now, I'm gonna leave it completely off. It's really easy to put on. Honestly, it's not even worth covering here. So crack open your Bentley, or just look at the earlier video of the disassembly on how I removed the rear sway bar, and it's the reverse of the removal. These two screws go onto the body, and the end links will go to the back of the trailing arm. But that about wraps it up for the rear suspension. And that does it for this rear suspension series and the entire front and rear suspension rebuild series of this car. The whole alignment process is completely new to me, so I don't know whether I'm going to cover that in later videos or not. But as you've seen through my parts selections, I did pick components that would allow me to dial in and kind of fine-tune the suspension very easily. So I think once I get the hang of doing the alignment activities a few times, then maybe in a later video series I will cover alignment process. But for now, thank you for following along on this crazy long rebuild series. It took me a year and a half to complete the entire front and rear suspension. It's hot, it's July. I'm gonna put this car back on the ground and get it aligned as best I can and go drive it. So thank you again. If this video series has helped you in any way, you know the drill. Please like, subscribe, share, click on any of the links to buy stuff on Amazon so I can get a slight commission off of that. Go to my website, buy some of my products that I offer for sale for Porsches. Otherwise, just thank you very much for your support, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye. Thank you.